So it's time for another Without a Net.
Without a net.
The falling dominoes of, well, we can either go a bad direction or a good direction. The bad direction is that the falling dominoes of cascading natural community failure, as when insect populations have collapsed, so too collapse the birds who rely on them. So too does everyone else. There are great extinction debts, what are called extinction debts, all over the world, where because habitat has been destroyed, there are still the creatures who lived in that habitat have been forced into secondary habitat, and they're still alive, but they won't survive because their habitat's gone. They're surviving on marginal habitat. And this is one of the things that just kills me. Just the other day, there was an entire new class of creature discovered. It's not fungus, it's not bacteria, it's not animal, and it's as different from fungus and as different from us as we are from fungus. It's an entirely new class, was just discovered by accident. And I'm not even sure if class is the right word. But anyway, how do people imagine that they can manage forests when there are entire huge categories of beings that they have not yet even identified? And how do they think they can manage a forest when they can never and will never understand the relationships between any of the beings, when they don't even understand that trees can communicate? They're barely understanding that now. How do people think? So the point is that the harm that is being caused everywhere is causing cascading systems failure in the natural world. And that, you can take out, I think about this in terms of our own bodies, that I could lose a finger and probably survive. I know people have had their gallbladder removed and they survived. But if you continue to chip away, eventually, there are, I was just talking with a doctor friend of mine about cancer. And he said, when we say somebody dies of cancer, for the most part, we don't actually know why they died. We don't know what, it's just that at some point, the cancer, it's not that, sometimes it will be that the cancer gets to a certain place and then does a certain thing that causes death. And you can trace the mechanics. But he said most of the time, the cancer's going along and the person's going along. And then at some point, you just get the organ shut down. And we're not actually sure why. I was talking to my heart doctor about this a couple years ago. And he was asking me how much I exercise, and we talked about exercise. And I have this relationship with doctors. I think a lot of them really like me unless they're really, really busy. And they really like me because I ask these questions. And the question I asked was, so how exactly does rigorous exercise keep you healthy? What's going on? When you raise your heart rate, why? How does that help? And he just looked at me. I started laughing and said, for the most part, we don't know. And my point having to do with this is, if we don't even know why exercise is good for you, how are we going to manage a forest or an ocean? But the real point is that at some point when you have cancer, you just start having organ failure. And we're not sure why, but at some point the dominoes start to fall. So that's all the bad news, is in the real world, dominoes are falling left and right. 2,000 dominoes or 200 dominoes a day, 200 species driven extinct per day. And those have, like a species we don't think about very often is the passenger pigeon louse. But there were passenger pigeons were the most common animal in North America. There were, I don't know if that's true. They were the most common bird in North America. The reason they weren't the most common animal is because there were species of insects that were larger in population. But they're the most common bird. There were more passenger pigeons in North America than all other birds combined. And this culture wiped them out. And when it wiped them out, it also wiped out the passenger pigeon louse, which is a species of lice, lived only on passenger pigeons. And then there are arguments made, by the way, and I found these really compelling, that passenger pigeons, the collapse of passenger pigeons, the murder of passenger pigeons, the extirpation of passenger pigeons, contributed to the loss of chestnuts, because the passenger pigeons would be in these huge flocks that would darken the sky for days at a time, and they would roost on branches so much that they would break the branches. And all these birds would be pooping. And there would be so much poop, it looked like snow. It literally, the ground was covered in bird poop to like depths. And what bird poop is very acidic. And when the passenger pigeons disappeared, they didn't disappear, when they were murdered, some of the soil became not so acidic. And there are arguments made that chestnut blight was able to take hold better because there wasn't all that pigeon poop to make the soil around the chestnut trees more acidic. So the point is, dominoes are falling, and it's horrible. And then the way dominoes are falling in a good sense is that even Newsweek the other day argued that within the next year or two, the United States will enter a recession that equals the Great Depression of the 1930s. And if you care more for the economy than you do for life on the planet, that's a bad thing. If you care more for life on the planet than you do the economy, that is a profoundly good thing, because what gross national product is, or gross domestic product, either one, what they are is measures of how quickly the world is converted from living planet into dead products. And we're seeing slow motion cascading system failure in terms of the economic system. As the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that part's not good. But as I don't know how it is in the towns where any of you live, but in the town where I live, probably 1 store out of 4 is empty. And we are in the midst. I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day about, when do you think that the big collapse is going to come? And he just looked at me and he said, "You don't see it already happening?" And the dominoes are falling for the economic system too. And it's really a race between whether the economic system and the biosphere, which one collapses first. And this is where leverage comes in, and this is where resistance comes in. And this is where, I think pretty much constantly, if a redwood could take on human manifestation, and not just human manifestation, but could act through me, what would they do? And if salmon could act through me, what would they do? And if minke whales could act through me, what would they do? And I think one of the things they would do is they would try to collapse the economy. They would try to take some dominoes and start knocking those down.